انت لغة عارف كيف اللي يقول اللي يكون معك شهادة تتلغج معاه، لكن اللي تلغج معك صح تمشي معاه كده عدل. ورب الكعبة اوريك تلغج معك. صباح كويس نسوي هذا حساب. يا اخي تكلم، قول لي ما قول لي بتأخر، قول لي اطلب بعدين، قول لي اطلب بعدين.
Paradigma pendidikan kami adalah memberi peluang bagi yang ingin berusaha untuk maju dan meraih kemandirian dengan penguasaan ilmu dan teknologi secara kreatif, inovatif, dinamis, dan berakhlakul karimah. Kami menjadi sebuah universitas yang unggul dalam pengembangan ilmu dan teknologi dengan berlandaskan nilai-nilai Islam untuk kemaslahatan umat.
Apa kabar kalian di sana? Sudah berminggu kita tidak bersua. Kampus sepi rasanya. Berbulan lalu, deru kendaraan di pagi hari menghidupkan kampus. Pun kadang ada yang berlari, berpeluh agar tidak terlambat masuk kuliah jam 7. Pagi yang penuh semangat juga pagi yang menyisakan kantuk setelah mengerjakan tugas malam suntuk. Sorak semarai yang tak kenal waktu. Sekarang kampus sepi. Pagi, siang, sore, malam, semua diganti dengan keramaian virtual, saling sapa di layar kaca. Tadinya segan mengaku, tapi toh ternyata kami tetap rindu mendengar candaan kalian yang tidak kenal tempat. Kadang juga sambatan saat bimbingan, tapi lebih seru saat tukar kelakar, melihat kalian berlalu lalang antara kelas, kantin, masjid, parkiran, ruang praktek, memperjuangkan asa, menciptakan masa depan. Kami rindu melihat kerut-kerut alis kalian saat akan mengeluarkan ide-ide cemerlang. Kami rindu melihat senyum dan lebarnya tawa kalian saat yang diupayakan berhasil digenggam. Kami rindu bisa membersamai masa-masa kalian menempa diri di sini. Badai pasti berlalu. Sampai waktu itu tiba, jaga diri kalian di sana. Dari kami yang penuh kerinduan.
This program is quite interesting and very impactful because these programs invited so many renowned and international scholars around the world. And here we focus on the Islamic social finance and SDGs, not only for Indonesian case but also for the world.
It's wonderful to be here in this exciting event. Summer School, Second International Training for Young Islamic Economic Leaders. Al-Quran, Science and Civilizational Renewal, Integration and Quality Assurance. Universitas Muhammadiyah, Yogyakarta.
So once again, and by everything, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Hopefully this event will be conducted smoothly and we will get some benefit from this one.
in IAUM, we managed to complete 10 textbooks the last 2 years, but another 40 to 60 coming up at International Islamic University. And other universities like USM coming up with 6 textbooks in quiz in Kuala Lumpur. And also here in Imam Bonjol, in Surakarta. And we hope that Universiti Muhamad Jogja will come up with a book with the number of resources that we have over here. So I hope based on this conference, more work can be done to improve the teaching and learning of Islamic economy in Universiti Muhamad. Thank you very much.
Saya berharap ke depannya event summer school ini akan makin berkembang dan makin memberi impak yang lebih besar kepada para peserta.
I'm very happy to be with this program. I believe that the idea of developing young minds is very important for the future development of Islamic economics, not only in discipline but also in practice.
First of all, I would like to express my happiness in having you all in the third International Conference on Islamic Economics and Financial Inclusion. Welcome to our campus, Universitas Muhammadiyah, Yogyakarta.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Saya Adi Warman Karim. Ini acara keren banget. Ini mesti dibuat lebih gede lagi tiap tahunnya biar lebih banyak lagi orang dapat manfaat dari acara ini. Nanti saya akan sampaikan Islamic Social Finance yang kita kaitkan dengan SDGs. Kita ingin berusaha mengangkat ilmu Islam dan kita tularkan ke semua teori-teori yang ada di dunia sehingga kita insya Allah umat Islam Indonesia bisa mewarnai dunia dengan pemikiran-pemikiran Islam.
Pada kesempatan kali ini dalam Forum International Conference yang diselenggarakan oleh IPF ya, Universitas Muda Yogyakarta, saya akan menyampaikan materi tentang Blagisme and SDGs, prospects and policies.
Thank you very much. I hope the organizer and the university will flourish and again to organize in this kind of conference in near future. Thank you very much.
I would like to thank the organizers for inviting me to share my paper on integration of Islamic microfinance with Waqf. And we had presented a model which is being practiced by our Center for Islamic Economics, basically called ITAJIR, which is in collaboration with the CIMB Islamic in Malaysia.
It's a good opportunity for me to attend this conference, the third conference Islamic Economic and Financial Inclusion. And it's a good opportunity for me also to bring my paper in this discussion, especially to link between Islamic finance and SDG.
Acara seminar internasional ini sangat bermanfaat ya bagi kalangan akademisi, kalangan mahasiswa untuk meningkatkan pengetahuannya, meningkatkan kualitas tulisannya khususnya tentang ekonomi keuangan syariah.
First, let me congratulate the organizing committee for choosing a topic that is very relevant today. As we know, in 2015, the United Nations formulated the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, whose idea is to bring people, planet, and prosperity together.
Acara ini sangat bagus, ya, terutama ketika topik-topiknya itu adalah sangat relevan pada zaman sekarang, dan topik-topik yang dibawa adalah topik-topik terhangat.
This agenda is very, very delightful, great, and it's very worth for me and also for other participants, because in 5 days, 8 to 8, we have many knowledge from the great speakers from overseas, and we know about Islamization of the knowledge in other world also. For the committee, I also say thanks very much, because you are very strong for 5 days here, and also very good to serve us as a participant.
So first of all, Alhamdulillah, because I got the best paper awards. Although I got the best paper award, it doesn't mean the other participants, their paper is not best. All the participants, they did their best, okay? So for me, Alhamdulillah, it's a kind of the reward from Allah SWT, because give me this opportunity to come here and present my idea. Alhamdulillah, my idea is appreciated, and also somehow is given some kind of incentive for my papers.
Finally, I am personally, as director, want to express sincere thanks and appreciation to all of the parties that have contributed much to the success of this event. May Allah bless us and always give us health and iman. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Welcome to International Program for Islamic Economics and Finance, Faculty of Economics and Business, Universitas Muhammadiyah, Yogyakarta. We are the first international program for Islamic Economics and Finance in Indonesia. It is a full-time program with the length of study around 3 until 4 years. We provide outstanding scheme both for theoretical and practical application of Islamic economics.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Welcome to the International Program for Islamic Economic and Finance, Faculty of Economic and Business, Universitas Muhammadiyah, Yogyakarta. This program aims at promoting toward reputable international program on Islamic Economic and Finance in ASEAN by 2021.
The study is conducted in the comfortable class and through interactive learning process. IPF provides the best facilities for the students to get the international exposure, such as providing good environment and using English to communicate in every learning process. IPF is supported by teaching staffs who graduated from top universities around the world with their excellent international achievements.
IPF is aimed at the following objectives. First, to facilitate students in attending the Islamic virtues. The second is to set up capacity building of graduates. And the last, to provide graduates in Islamic economics and finance equipped with ability and good qualification as well as English language proficiency.
In response to achieve the excellence of the students, IPF also support the students with a community to learn about public speaking, organization, discussion, and trainings to enhance soft skills of the students that not studied inside the class.
Development Division. briefly introduce myself to you. I come from China and my major is finance, but I'm staying in UMY. I belong IPIEF. I have learned a lot of knowledge from the Islamic financial system.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh สวัสดีค่ะดิฉันนางสาวไมซารัสสามแอมาจากประเทศไทยนะคะ I'm IPF alumni 2011 I was graduated from IPF on June 2016 I'm very grateful to be a part of IPF because in IPF I got so many experience knowledge so many experience and good lecture and a lot of friends. After I'm graduate from IPF, I directly to got master degree scholarship from Indonesia government to continue my study in Universiti Gadjah Mada.
For all of you who want to study and learn about Islamic economic and finance, let's come and join with IPF. Let we together move toward international and reputable program on Islamic finance in Indonesia and the world. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Welcome to
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. How are you, dear participants? Are you still with us? Okay. Again, thank you very much and welcome again to our 5th public lecture series on risk management. International Training for Young Islamic Economic Leaders, ITILs, by Department of Economics, Faculty of Economics and Business, Universitas Muhamad Jakarta. First of all, let's thank Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, who has given us the mercies and blessing today, so we can attend this subsequent series of risk management lectures in the base of Iman and health. Secondly, may salat and salam always be delivered to our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his companion, family, and ummah. Thirdly, I would like to welcome and thanks to Dr. Abduh, who has been with us today. Yeah. Dear participants, by the way, we have been in the fifth public lecture series on risk management. So yesterday you had followed some public lectures by different speakers, and even this morning we just had one speakers from University Utara Malaysia, and right now we carry on to the next presentation by Associate Professor Dr. Muhammad Abduh. So before we start, maybe you can see in the screen, yeah, that Dr. Abduh actually is currently the associate professors at University Brunei Darussalam, and he was completed his bachelor degree in statistics, yeah, from Bogor Agriculture University Indonesia, and also he took second master twice, yeah, in terms of master degree. The first is Magister Hukum Islam, Fikih Al-Muamalah from Ibnu Khaldun University Bogor, and also he completed the second Master of Economics from International Islamic University Malaysia. Yeah, and right now also he continued his PhD in business administration, yeah, from International Islamic University Malaysia, and since 2013 and until now he is a lecturer in University Brunei Darussalam. So Dr. Abduh actually will discuss with us some issues about Islamic banking and finance, yeah, and he has written so many books internationally. You can just search his names, and there will be a lot of books that has been written by him. And also he has published so many papers, particularly at the high-rank journals, Scopus and others. Yeah, you just search his name in the Google. You can find so many papers under his expertise. So here he'll be talking about the risk management and focusing on some regulatory aspects, on particularly in Islamic banking. And Dr. Abduh, for your information, this program actually has been started since a week ago, 10 August, and will be finished until 18th of August. So this program will be around 3 weeks, and the participants actually is divided into 2 courses. Some of them are taking the course on risk management, and some of them are taking the course on green economy. So specialty for the risk management, there are some subject and also some invited speakers, including yourself. And in terms of the learning process, the student conducting not only just listening to the public lecture series, but also they are requested to finish and settle some e-learning academic platform, yeah, through our platform named My Class. So there will be evaluation, assessment, quizzes, also some test competency, and in the end, they will be given a certificate of attendance, a certificate of competency. And in terms of the countries, according to our data, the participants, around almost 200 participants actually, they are coming from majority from Indonesia, yeah, and the rest coming from around 13 countries, yeah, including Malaysia, Also some of them from Middle East, yeah, Africa, yeah. And in terms of the public lectures, we invited more than 15 speakers, including Dr. Abduh. So with that, Dr. Abduh, time is yours, Dr. Abduh, for enlightening us about risk management. It's okay, Dr. Abduh? Time is yours, please. Please, Doctor, you can unmute your, yes.
Okay. So sorry. All right. So, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and very good afternoon to all of you. So, but before that, can you grab? Okay. Dr. Dimas can. Assalamualaikum, Dr. Dimas. Can you hear me?
Okay, I'll assign you as a co-host. Sorry.
Oh yeah. Thank you.
Sorry.
All right, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. And again, sorry, a very good afternoon to all of you. And thank you very much for having me here, Dr. Dimas and UMY, sorry. UMW is like a company in Malaysia. So UMY, Universiti Muhammadiyah Yogyakarta. And and also for all the participants attending this online lectures, thank you for having me here. And I would like to share with you, as basically instructed or basically offered by UMY. So I would like to share. Okay. I would like to share my slide with you with regard to. Right. So I hope that you can see. Okay, so all right. So the topic that I will like to share with you this afternoon is about operational risk in Islamic banks, an introductory level. So basically, an introduction to operational risk in Islamic banks. Okay. Yeah. My name is Muhamad Abduh. As basically introduced by Dr. Dimas, I am currently reside in Brunei Darussalam as a lecturer in Universiti Brunei Darussalam, especially in UBD School of Business and Economics, and currently as the head of program for accounting and finance, which is basically also offering master in Islamic finance for those who are interested to pursue their master in and PhD in UBD, I think. Right. So, yeah. Okay. So, operational risk is defined as the risk of loss resulting from the inadequacy or failure of internal processes as related to people and systems, or from external risk. Operational risk also includes the risk of failure of technology, system, and analytical models. And it is argued that operational risks are likely to be significant for Islamic banks due to their specific contractual features and general legal environment. So in short, basically, operational risk is the risk resulted from internal and external factors that can basically disturb the operational of the bank itself. A survey conducted by Khan and Ahmed in 2001, a long time ago, I think this was the first survey talk about operational risk, particularly what you call displaced commercial risk, withdrawal risk, and others. So their survey shows that the managers of Islamic banks perceive operational risk as the most critical risk after markup risk. The survey finds that operational risk is lower than the fixed income contracts of Murabaha and Ijarah, and higher in the deferred sales contract of Salam and Istisna. Now, the relatively higher rankings of the instruments indicate that banks find these contracts complex and difficult to implement. Okay. A specific aspect of Islamic banking could raise the operational risk of Islamic banks. Yeah. So number one is cancellation risk in istisna contracts, failure of the internal control system to detect and manage potential problems in the operational process, potential difficulties in enforcing Islamic contract in a broader legal environment, failure to comply with Sharia requirements, potential costs and risks of monitoring equity type contracts and the associated legal risks. So these are some aspects of Islamic banking that could raise the operational risk of Islamic banks. Yeah. Now, the type of operational risk in Islamic banks. First is a displaced commercial risk. Okay. The IOV identified displaced commercial risk as the risk when an Islamic bank is under pressure to pay its investors, depositors a rate of return higher than what should be payable under the actual terms of the investment contract. Yeah. So this can occur when a bank underperforms during a period and is unable to generate adequate profits for distributions to the account holders. To mitigate displaced commercial risk, Islamic banks may decide to waive their portion of profits and thus dissuade depositors from withdrawing their funds. An extreme example is the International Islamic Bank for Investment and Development in Egypt, which distributed all of its profit to investment account holders and nothing to shareholders based on the research done by Ward 2000. Yeah? So the first type of operational risk that discussed here is a displaced commercial risk. Yeah. So it's basically it happens if the Islamic banks that we patronize give us or provides us with a lower rate of return as compared to other Islamic banks or conventional banks or maybe the what you call other financial institutions. Yeah. The experience gained from the attempt to mitigate displaced risk, commercial risk has led to the development of two standard practices in the industry. The first practice is for the financial institution to maintain a profit equalization reserve. Now, this reserve is funded by setting aside of gross income before deducting the bank's own share as an agent. So the reserve provides as cushion to ensure smooth future returns and to increase the owner's equity for bearing future shocks. Now, similar to PER, an investment risk reserve is also maintained out of the income of investors' depositors after allocating the bank share in order to dampen the effects of the risk of future investment losses. Yeah. The practice of maintaining reserve to ensure smooth income over a period of time is becoming common practice, but it has attracted also objections. Yeah. While this practice is in alignment with prudent risk management, it raises a governance issue that needs attention. First, limited disclosure of such reserve makes investment account holders uneasy. Yeah. Second, investment account holders do not have the rights to influence the use of such reserve and to verify the exposure of overall investment. And third, investment account holders with long-term investment objectives may welcome this practice, but investors with a short-term view may feel that they are subsidizing the returns of long-term investors. Finally, some banks require investment account holders to waive their rights to this reserve. Okay, so the implementation of PER and IRR is also basically inviting critics from many experts. Okay, because number one is about the limited disclosure of such reserve, make investment account holders uneasy. So they basically don't know like how much and you know the total reserve that is put under the PER and IRR. Second is because investment account holders do not have the right to influence the use of such reserve. So basically, even though those pool fund is basically taken from their portion of profits, yeah, but they don't have the rights to influence the use of such reserve. Yeah. Third, investment account holders with long-term investment objective may welcome this practice. So if the investors basically holding a long-term investment portfolio with that particular bank, that should be okay. But what about the short-term one? So basically their portion of profit has been cut, but you know, it's basically not in favor of their what we call objective, but other investors' objective, which is basically those with long-term investment. Yeah. So these are the critics for the implementation of PER and IRR. Okay. The second type of operational risk in Islamic banks is withdrawal risk. Yeah. So it results mainly from the competitive pressures an Islamic bank faces, both from other Islamic banks and from conventional banks. Yeah. With Islamic windows, conventional banks with Islamic windows of subsidiary. Yeah. An Islamic bank will be exposed to the risk that depositors will withdraw their funds if they are receiving a low rate of return than they will receive from another bank. If an Islamic bank is run inefficiently and keeps producing lower returns, depositors may eventually will decide to move their money, eroding the franchise value of the bank. Yeah. So let me share here. So now, with regard to withdrawal risk, yeah. So this part of the research done, particularly in Malaysia, how to identify and mitigate withdrawal risk in Islamic banking. Okay. So the nature of Islamic banks, if we go back to the very fundamental idea of Islamic bank, yeah. In early 1970s, it was believed that it would take the form of two-tier mudarabah model. Yeah, two-tier mudarabah model means at the asset side and the liability side, both are using mudarabah model. Yeah, so like from here, the liability side, when people basically depositing their money in banks, so it is basically under profit and loss sharing contract. And banks, when they channel the fund to entrepreneurs or businesses or in the form of investment, also under profit and loss sharing contract, right? So in 1998, Iqbal et al. Explains that two-tier mudarabah model replaces interest by profit sharing modes in both liability and asset side of the bank. Now, this model will also take up the role of an investment intermediary rather the second model of Islamic bank is the one-tier mudarabah with multiple investment tools, which was evolved because Islamic banks face practical and operational problems in using profit-sharing modes of financing on the asset side. Yeah. So on the asset side, if they are using profit and loss sharing, mudarabah contract, yeah, on the asset side. So this requires trustworthiness instead of creditworthiness. So it means that banks must really, put trust everything, okay, with the ability, the capability of the entrepreneurs to run the business and to develop profit. Yeah. However, that is really risky for banks because banks are basically only managing third-party fund. Means that it is not 100% banks fund. So banks has the liabilities or responsibilities to the depositors, yeah, towards the depositors. So in this case, basically what we have today, yeah, is basically profit loss sharing contract on the liability side, but fixed income on the asset side. So this is what we have today. Or maybe some bank has both on fixed profit sharing. So on the liabilities on the asset side in the fixed income contract. Yeah. The fixed income modes of financing includes murabaha, salam, istisna, and ijarah. Yeah. So if we look at our Islamic banking structure today, so this is basically the liability and the asset. The liability, saving and investment deposit take the form of profit sharing investment accounts. Some may be in the form of wadi'ah, yeah, demand deposit checking accounts that the nature of Qardul Hasan that are returned fully on demand, okay, whereby on the asset side is in fixed income modes of financing. Yeah. Now, using profit sharing principle to reward depositors is a unique feature of Islamic banks, which changes the nature of risk that Islamic banks face. Yeah. Now, by sharing the returns with the saving or investment depositors, bank basically eliminates financial risk but introduces some other risk. Yeah? Because when it is sharing the returns, means that bank has no obligations to provide a fixed amount of what you call return, yeah, to the depositors, okay, because it is a profit sharing. So it depends on how much is the profit at the particular time. Okay, but it also introduces some other risks. Now, as depositors are rewarded on the profit loss sharing method, they share the business risk of the banking operation of the bank. This is according to IOV 1999. And some additional risks due to rewarding depositors with banks' variable profit are fiduciary risk and displaced commercial risk. Is basically what we have discussed earlier. Now, fiduciary risk arises from breaching of investment contract or mismanagement of funds by the bank. It is sometimes also called Sharia risk, since all contracts in Islamic banks must follow the Sharia law. Secondly is displaced commercial risk, risk of paying profits out of equity in periods when actual profits are lower than expected. Yeah. Now, the above two special risks faced by Islamic banks are combined into one specific risk called withdrawal risk. Yeah. Because the output eventually the depositor will withdraw from that particular Islamic bank. They may stop, become the bank customer because they don't believe anymore with banks, or they just simply move to another Islamic bank. Yeah. All right, so this is all right. So this is some scenario that may drive the withdrawal action of depositors from Islamic banks. Yeah. So when we talk about Islamic banks, first we have discussed just now that it was expected to be a two-tiers mudharabah model, which is basically on the liability on the asset side. However, what we have today is one-tier mudharabah, yeah, which is fixed income on the asset side and profit sharing mode on the liability side. Okay. Now, when it is a profit sharing mode, so first scenario, if the profit shared better than the rates of return paid by conventional banking, then should be okay. I mean, the Islamic banking customer will remain patronizing that particular banking Islamic bank. Yeah. Second scenario, shadow the rates of return paid by conventional banking. Yeah. So this basically reduction of shareholders' share and increment in donation to profit sharing investment account holders. Basically, what you call the PR and IRR method. So if, for example, the return is less than the conventional bank, so Islamic banks can up basically using the PR, IRR, what you call reserve. Yeah. Now, if the lower rate of return in that particular Islamic bank happens due to overall downturn of the economy. Yeah? So if the lower rate of return happens due to the overall downturn of the economy, okay, means that not only that particular banks, other banks also affected by these situations. So it's fine. Basically, the customer, bank depositors, they will remain with that particular bank because they don't have place to go because all other banks also are facing the same difficulties. Yeah. But if the lower rate of return restricted to a particular Islamic bank, right, then there will be another scenario influencing it. Yeah. So number one, we must be able to identify, because according to research done by many scholars in the area of Islamic banking depositors and customers' behavior, at least we can divide that there are two types of depositors in Islamic banking. Number one is rational depositors. Number two is religious depositors. I don't want to say irrational, but I call it religious depositors, right? So rational depositors means those customers who patronizing Islamic banks with the objective of protecting their assets' real value. Basically, the their objective to protect their assets' real value. Okay, so these customers basically they don't really consider Islamic banks as the only options because that is not their intention. However, for religious depositors, those who never banking before Islamic banks basically established, yeah, there are some people that don't want to involve with any banking activities except for, let's say, for example, it is mandatory for him to open an account in that particular conventional bank because of, let's say, as a condition, if when he works somewhere in order to pay the salary. Okay, but other than that, basically he did not use any products or facilities provided by that bank. Okay, because he believed that interest is prohibited, and he doesn't want to deal to any type of banking products or facilities offered by them. Even they don't want to take mortgage loan because he believed that it is still under the umbrella of interest of riba. Okay. Now for this type of depositors, yeah, Sharia compliance issues, Sharia compliance products and practices is very, very important. Okay, they may leave the bank because of certain things, evidence that it is not in line with Sharia compliance, right? So for this type of depositors in Islamic bank, it may end up at the same result, which is basically withdrawal risk. Yeah. So this is what you call factors that may influence, yeah, the withdrawal actions of the people, yeah, of Islamic banking customers. Now another factors that may influence, yeah, Islamic banking customers to withdraw, yeah, their money from Islamic banks is a rumor of banking crisis. Yeah. So this is basic. This is not yet what you call what you call that, not so on this basically rumor of banking crisis, but what I'm going to share with you is something which is basically research studied under this area. Yeah. Now withdrawal risk exposes Islamic banks to the risk of losing deposits to competition from other Islamic or conventional banks due to the number one is lower rate of return. Okay. If it is because of lower rate of return, then it may drives the what you call to displace commercial risk. Yeah. Number two, because of negative rumors or bad news, okay, it can lead us to the reputation risk. Yeah. Number three, violating Sharia tenets or principles in products and practices. This can lead us to Sharia risk, fiduciary risk. Yeah. So withdrawal risk basically consists of all these three, a combination of all these three type of operational risk. Yeah. The Curie speech at the Chicago Forum on the American Institute of Banking in 1938, February 24, 1938, the remarkable stability of the deposits of mutual savings banks throughout the Depression suggests that the decline shown in commercial bank time deposits was not so much a reflection of the entrenchment on savings for living expenses as it was attributed to because of loss of confidence. Okay, so there's also what we call the trust, yeah, the trust of the people towards the bank is also very important. Okay, Takemura and Kozu 2009 found that depositors who believe in media as sources of information such as weekly, monthly magazines, internet, and conducted conversations within the social community, WhatsApp, Telegram, and other social media platform will be more susceptible in trusting banks. Yeah, most of them are likely to withdraw their deposits from banks because of negative rumors in media or social community. So the research by Takemura and Kozu 2009 was done in Japan. Yeah. the Gilkison and Ruff, studied the early liquidity withdrawals in American banks. They found that early liquidity withdrawal from depositors were mainly motivated by reinvestment incentives. Okay. However, after 3 years, the same authors found that early withdrawal was significantly sensitive to changes in interest rate and the need for liquidity rather than higher return on investment. So it's basically they're trying to say that what you call the interest rate offered by competitors bank, like other Islamic banks and maybe conventional banks which open the what you call Islamic windows or Islamic subsidiaries, or even for rational depositors, the conventional bank itself, if they can offer them better rates of return, then they may just withdraw from Islamic banks and then move their fund to the conventional banks. Ahmed 2003 found that asset preservation in terms of minimizing the risk of loss due to low rate of return was an important factor explaining depositors' withdrawal behavior. So it's quite similar with Gilkison's. And Khan and Ahmed 2001 found that managers of Islamic banks perceive operational risk as the most critical risk. And I still remember when I had discussion with Pak Mus in IIBF when I was teaching there. So Pak Mus said that it is good to study about withdrawal risk and the behavior of the Islamic banking customer, because Islamic banking customer is about Islamic banking operation is about trust between customers and the bank itself. Because if we go deeply into the other operation type like of Islamic banking, it may similar to conventional banks. What different is there are some attachment between the customers and the bank itself. So Islamic banking is about the relationship between customers and the bank. So from those research that has been done by many scholars, so I try to compile them and then to see whether or not the withdrawal risk is really exists in the real situations. Okay, so motivations to patronize Islamic banks. So the study that I did was basically to study the motivation of the people in patronizing Islamic banks. So what are basically their expectations? Okay, so when they patronize Islamic bank, when they come to Islamic bank and start engaging with them, become the customers and whatnot. So basically, what are the motivations that drive them? Okay? And secondly, try to study also the factors affecting withdrawal behavior. Okay, thus, if, for example, if the customers cannot meet, couldn't meet what they have been expected, so does that really affecting the withdrawal behavior? Are they going to withdraw from Islamic bank, or does it just remain there? And second, the third one that I tried to study was basically using the econometrics tools. I tried to study the relationship between the fluctuations of total deposit in Islamic banking, with the macroeconomic variables, existing macroeconomic variables. So if try to see the evidence of withdrawal risk in Islamic banking. So according to the study done, so this is the, basically the findings that I would like to share with you. Okay, so there are 6 dimensions. Okay, that become the motivations of the people to patronize Islamic bank. So number 1 is Sharia compliance issue. Okay, so Sharia compliance issue placed number 1 by the customer means that the only thing different between Islamic banking and conventional banking is basically the elements of Sharia, the Islam itself, right? So that's why the respondents put Sharia compliant issue as the first element that considered very important. Okay. Secondly, of course, profitability. Okay, so after fulfilling the Sharia requirements, then they go for profitability. After that, they go for reputations. After that, they go for the bank status, whether it is local or foreign banks. Yeah. After that, they go for facilities and services. Yeah. The satisfaction level. What kind of facilities I can provide them. Okay. Basically, and then the friendly personnel. Okay. So this basically the 6 dimensions come up. What we call using the AHP, a simple analytical hierarchy process. Okay. When we basically short interview of our respondents. Yeah. And for your information, this study was done in Malaysia when I was still there in 2015. All right, the situation might change, but the foundations of it, I think, will still remain. Yeah. Secondly, try to see the factors affecting withdrawal behavior. Yeah, factors affecting withdrawal behavior. So it's basically what we call. I try to identify what is their main factor or their main what we call motivation to patronize Islamic bank, right? So based on their response, I categorize them into 3 groups. Number 1, those who main motivation is to avoid non-Sharia compliance, what we call financial activities. Yeah. Second group is basically those who are looking for competitive rate of return. Yeah. So if it is uncompetitive rate of return, so the response, I will withdraw. Yeah. For this also, if they found that his bank or her bank is conducting non-Sharia compliance practices or offering non-Sharia compliance products, then they will withdraw. Yeah. The third group of the respondents are those who are what we call easily affected by rumor about banking crisis. Basically, those who are active in social media, in Facebook, in other platform of social media. Yeah. So according to their response, I analyzed using logistic regression. I analyzed them using logistic regression. Sorry. All right. Yeah. So we have like 13 variables, okay, but not all 13 being used actually, I think, because some variables using factor analysis need to be excluded because that particular factor is not basically attached to any dimension. So we have x1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, no 8 and 9. So 10, 11, 12, and 13. Yeah. So this is basically some other variables. Okay. The type of what you call type of account, okay, will affect will provide impact on their decision whether or not they will withdraw or not to withdraw. Okay, so with regard to non-Sharia compliance, yeah, we can see here 2 star in significant at what you call 5%. Yeah. So here it is saying that investment account holders, yeah, when they meet the situation of non-Sharia compliance, okay, they have the significant, yeah, here. So this is the odd ratio, yeah, this is the odd ratio. So compared to non-investment account holders, yeah, the investment account holders will have the possibility to withdraw their fund, yeah, from that particular Islamic bank 12.8 higher than those with no investment account holders. Yeah. So in this case, it says that they will withdraw. Yeah. So for deposit more than 10K ringgit Malaysia, yeah, in this case not significant. Here the employee, yeah, those who are employed and non-employed, yeah. So those who are employed in this case will is the other way around. Yeah, when we say this means that those who are employed, even though, yeah, the Islamic banks is, yeah, proven to or not proven, or maybe like being discussed, yeah, or something like that, or yeah, but particularly proven to, especially what you call proven to what you call have a non-Sharia compliance practices and offering non-Sharia compliance products for the non-employed, for the employed people, they will remain with the banks. Yeah, but for the non-employed people, they will not remain with the banks. Yeah, so this is basically from here. It will take time to explain everything, but from here, I would like to share with you that there is evidence of what you call withdrawal risk. Yeah. Next is the psychological aspect. This also shows that there is evidence of withdrawal risk in Islamic banking depositors. So if we can see here, this is basically the simple the theory of recent actions, yeah, a very famous theory in psychometricians, yeah, among the psychometricians, I think. So the intention to behave, in this case, basically the intention to withdraw from Islamic bank is significantly affected by attitude toward behavior. Attitude toward behavior is basically the knowledge that they have about the situation, and subjective norm. Subjective norm is basically the influence of people perceive importance by him or by her. So in this case, I may say that from these findings, yeah, the influence of people perceive important, yeah, by the individual, by the respondents, is significantly affecting their decision whether or not they will withdraw from Islamic banks if they found that it is non-Sharia compliance, low rate of return, and or rumor about banking crisis. Yeah, so people perceive important, like parents. Yeah, if they are married, then maybe their spouse, your husband and wife. Yeah, their ustads, ustazah, yeah, their guru. Yeah, so these are the people perceive important. Yeah, so whether or not they will remain with the bank or they will just withdraw with the bank, that depends on how strong is the influence from these people. Yeah. The second factors that significantly affecting their decisions, yeah, intention to withdraw, is basically their own knowledge about it. How strong is their knowledge? How deep is their knowledge on that particular idea? Yeah, knowledge about the banking, knowledge about what is basically Islamic bank, and knowledge with regard to the banking performance and whatnot. That will affect their decision on whether or not they will withdraw, yeah, from Islamic banks. Okay. Next is basically I try to relate between macroeconomic situation like inflation and whatnot, basically, with the fluctuations of the total deposit in Islamic banks. Okay, using monthly data from January 2000 to December 2010, the co-integration test and vector reflection model were utilized to uncover the dynamic relationship between macroeconomic variables and crisis with total deposit of Islamic banking. Again, this basically to what we call try to sorry, okay, yeah, they try to see to try to find evidence of the withdrawal risk actions. Yeah, now in this case, basically it is significant here. So basically for crisis, yeah, and then for the what we call base lending rate, this basically the interest rate, yeah, and then this is the inflation, yeah, and this is the IG is industrial production index, yeah, and then the Islamic deposit rate and conventional deposit rate, yeah. So here we can see that crisis has a positive impact on total deposit of Islamic banking. Yeah, maybe because this research was done in 2010, so it basically has the experience of the crisis in early 1999 to 2001, yeah, and then 2008 2009. Yeah. So in that particular time frame, yeah, basically the what you call the chart is different. So in this case, it shows a positive movement of total deposit of Islamic banks. Most probably, some people from conventional banks, when they know that the crisis will come, or maybe even during the crisis, withdraw their money from conventional banks and move them to the Islamic banking. Yeah, so there is a positive impact on about crisis, but of crisis on the total deposit of Islamic banking. Yeah, whereby inflation is negative relationship. Okay, interest rate also negative relationship, and the Islamic deposit rate, it has positive relationship here, means that when the Islamic banks introducing higher rate of return, then of course people will move their fund from conventional to Islamic banking. Yeah? And this conventional rate has a negative relationship, means that if conventional banks has introducing higher rate of return, then the total deposit of Islamic bank goes down. Yeah, that means that most probably the rational depositors, they will move their fund from Islamic banks to conventional banks. Yeah. Right. So this is the another explanation of it. Yeah. So that was about the withdrawal risk, which is basically one of the main topics if we read the articles written by Ahmed and Khan. Yeah. So operational risk is mostly about the withdrawal risk. Yeah. However, the next type of operational risk is governance risk. Yeah? The importance of governance and the risks associated with the poor governance have recently attracted the attention of researchers and policymakers. Yeah? Governance risk refers to the risk arising from failure to govern the institutions, negligence in conducting businesses and meeting contractual obligations, and weak internal and external institutional environment, including legal risks, whereby banks are unable to enforce their contracts. Yeah, and governance risk is also, I mean, it was like I think the discussion will be like a normal corporate governance in the conventional banking. Yeah, because only that when we talk governance in Islamic banking, we must include the Sharia elements. Of course, then we must include the Sharia advisors inside. Yeah. Next is the fiduciary risk. Yeah, fiduciary risk is the risk that arises from an institution's failure to perform in accordance with explicit and implicit standards applicable to its fiduciary responsibilities. Now, fiduciary risk leads to the risk of facing legal recourse if the bank breaches its fiduciary responsibility toward depositors and shareholders. As fiduciary agents, Islamic banks are expected to act in the best interest of investors, depositors, and shareholders. Now, if and when the objective of investors and shareholders diverge from the actions of the bank is exposed to fiduciary risk. Yeah, it can lead to dire consequences. First, it can cause reputational risk, creating panic among depositors who may rush to withdraw their funds. Second, it may require the bank to pay a penalty or compensations, which can result in a financial loss. Yeah? Third, it can have a negative impact on the market price of shareholders' equity. Fourth, it can affect the bank's cost and access to liquidity. And finally, it may lead to insolvency if the bank is unable to meet the demands of current investment accounts holders. The next type of risk under operational risk, I try to expedite this. I think it take too long. Transparency risk. Yeah. Transparency is defined as the public disclosure of reliable and timely information that enables users of that information to make an accurate assessment of banks' financial condition and performance, business activities, risk profile, and risk management practices. Yeah? Accordingly, lack of transparency creates the risk of incurring losses due to bad decisions based on incomplete or inaccurate information. Lack of transparency arises from two sources: the use of non-standard conventions for reporting Islamic financial contracts and the lack of uniform standards of reporting among banks. Yeah? Now, the disclosure of regime of Islamic banks needs to become more comprehensive and transparent, with a focus on the disclosure of risk profile, risk return mix, and internal governance. It requires coordinating the rules of supervisory disclosure and accounting standards with the proper differentiation between consumer-friendly disclosure to assist investment account holders and market-oriented disclosure to inform the markets. Yeah. Sharia risk is related to the structure and functioning of Sharia boards at the institutional and systemic level. The risk could be of two types. Number one, due to non-standard practices in respect of different contracts in different jurisdictions, and due to the failure to comply with Sharia rules. Differences in the interpretation of Sharia rules result in differences in financial reporting, auditing, and accounting treatment. For instance, while some Sharia scholars consider the terms of a murabaha or istisna contract to be binding on the buyer, others argue that the buyer has the option to decline even after placing an order and paying the commitment fee. Now, while different schools of thought consider different practices to be acceptable, the bank's risk is higher in non-binding cases and may lead to litigation in the case of unsettled transactions. So non-binding cases mean if, for example, I put an order to a bank to buy a car, but then when the bank bought it, then I said I don't want to. Okay, I recall it. I don't want to continue the transactions. So that will be a lot of impact, towards the bank. The relationship between the bank and the investors, depositors is not only that of an agent and principal, it is also based on an implicit trust between the two, that the agent will respect the desires of the principal to comply fully with the Sharia. Now, this relationship distinguishes Islamic bank from conventional bank and is the sole justification for the existence of Islamic banks. Now, if the bank is unable to maintain this trust and the bank's actions lead to non-compliance with the Sharia, the bank risks breaking the confidence of the investors, depositors. Therefore, the bank should give high priority to ensuring transparency in compliance with the Sharia and take actions to avoid lack of compliance. Next is reputational risk. Reputational risk or headline risk is the risk that the irresponsible actions or behavior of management that will damage the trust of the bank's clients. Although the fiduciary and Sharia risk also stand for negligence and non-compliance, reputational risk is that the risk that the irresponsible behavior of a single institution could taint the reputation of other banks in the industry. In this case is Islamic banks. How many times we hear that people stating Islamic banks is just the same with conventional banks, just because of one irresponsible action done by one person. For example, I still remember when I was in Bogor, I think. I think in Bogor, there was a news that one of the head of Islamic branch Islamic bank branch manager was caught in inappropriate place, inappropriate venue. So that will basically destroy the image of the Islamic banks overall. Even though the action is basically done by one irresponsible person. So negative publicity can have a significant impact on an institution's market share, profitability, and liquidity. And that can also happen because of the, let's say, the frontliner of the Islamic banks. They cannot explain properly what is, each contract when the customer asks. So the image that is basically catch by the customers is that, oh, so the Islamic banks is just the same like conventional bank, only that you change the name from interest to profit. That's it. Just because of the inability of the frontliner in explaining their contracts. Nevertheless, all Islamic banks in a given market are exposed to such risks. Close collaboration among financial institutions, standardization of contract and practices, self-examinations, establishment of industry associations are some of the steps needed to mitigate reputational risks. And thank you very much. I think I took too long time, Dr. Dimas. I apologize for that. And I think I will ask you to wait. I need to how to I don't know how to. So are we let the screen like this, or how to close it? Let me stop share. Okay.
Yeah, stop share.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Abduh, for your enlightening presentations. about credit withdrawal risk. Yeah. You see, dear participants, just now that Dr. Abduh has clearly explained about the risk coming from Islamic banks by looking at particularly at the depositors' behavior. You see that in Islamic bank we have two sides, the left-hand side and right-hand side. The left-hand side is the relationship between the depositors and the bank, and right-hand side from the bank with the entrepreneurs. So just now, Dr. Abdul tried to explain and explore the relationship between the bank and the depositors, the left-hand side. And he explained clearly about the potential of withdrawal risk due to the behavior of the depositors that expecting the fixed return from the bank. Yeah. And if I want to ask a bit, Dr. Abdul, before we open the floor, is how about the behavior of the depositors in Indonesian Islamic Bank, Dr. Abdul? Is it based on religious motive or rational motive?
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Dimas. Yeah, to be honest, I have not yet conducting research in Indonesia overall. We did for I think in Bogor area and just Jakarta a bit. But from that research that we have done, but it was done I think more than 5 years ago, and the situation may change. You know, the people more open. You know, this time around. So I think what you call it may change. However, in conclusions of what we have done, what we have studied is they have the same behavior that like we studied in Malaysia, that Islamic bank depositors in Indonesia also divided into two groups. Yeah? Those rational depositors, one of the what you call they whether or not they are rational depositors, normally they have like multiple accounts, like conventional banks. They have also in Islamic banks. Okay, this type of depositors may likely to be the rational depositors. Yeah. Those who only have an account in Islamic banking, most likely they are religious depositors. Okay, but you know, further research needs to be done for Indonesian case. Yeah, yeah, Dr. Dimas.
Okay, it does mean that the majority of the Indonesian people in Indonesia, they are motivated highly by the changing of the interest rate from the conventional bank, Dr. Abdul. So it means that if there is changing in interest rate, meaning that higher compared to the return in Islamic bank, they will move to that conventional banks, or the displaced commercial risk will be higher in Indonesia. Is it your funding on the last paper?
Well, we also need to see the type of account that they have. Okay, for saving account holders, they may not likely, you know, shift to another bank's easy. I think because okay, those who open saving account, basically they don't expect for higher return. They just want to, you know, deposit their money so that it is safer as compared to their, you know, put it under their pillow, for example, right? But when we are talking about the investment account holders, this holders, they are clearly looking for something in return, right? So they may what you call expecting something, right? They want to protect the real the value of their asset, at the same time also trying to, you know, gain profit. Yeah. So I think it depends because if we look Indonesia, not Indonesia now, it's OJK, it's OJK monthly report. Mostly are saving account holders who are not really susceptible in terms of lower rate of return given by the banks, because that is not their objective basically. Okay. Withdraw anytime they want. But for investment account holders, this may be a different story. Yeah, different story for them, because they are looking for something in return. Allah alam, Dr. Dimas.
Okay, doctor, thank you very much for your explanation. Okay, right now I'm open to the floor. Please, dear sisters and brothers, if you have some comments, inquiries, or question to Dr. Abduh, please mention your name, which institution you are from, and your question, please. Please, brothers and sisters, time is yours.
Yeah, doctor, can I comment?
Okay, please, Brother Saiko, please mention your name and which institution and your questions.
Okay, thank you very much for giving me the floor once again. My name is Sekou Gassama. I'm from the Gambia, West Africa. I'm currently studying in Indonesia, University of Airlangga, Surabaya. Thank you, Dr. Abdullah, for that wonderful presentation. I've picked a lot of points there, and then I've learned a lot. But I will just speak to you. Maybe you can share the material with the students. I mean, going forward to the question, I have a couple of questions for you. You've talked about withdrawal risks, and then you talked about the two-tie mudaraba. So basically, when you talked about the two-tie mudaraba, the formula or the diagram you displayed there is almost similar to conventional banking system. That is, I mean, mobilizing deposit, keeping it safely, and giving it to the investors. So what makes Islamic banking, I mean, way of operating or dealing this transaction or activities different from conventional banks? I know about conventional banks, but not much about Islamic bank. I just saw the formula I've seen is the same exact way that how it operates in the conventional banks. That's number one. And then the second question will be withdrawal risks in Islamic banking. And this is a fundamental problems that one can say the Islamic banks are facing in the world at large. What do you think can be done in order for Islamic banks to mitigate this problem? I know it's a long persistent problem and it's a big problem, but why I ask this question, because I've seen you've made a very interesting research on this in Malaysia, where you talked about, you made your research on these withdrawal risks, and then you table where you Sharia compliance is on top of it. That is, those motivated to go in for Islamic bank are motivated on top of that reasons. Sharia is on top of it, Sharia compliance, and those withdrawing on top of that one also, Sharia is on top of it. So my question here is there any study basically done for those living Islamic bank, whether they move to conventional bank or they move to another Islamic banks, whether in Malaysia here, Indonesia, or in Brunei where you are currently? Is there any study done about that? Because that is very, very important. Because somebody who is motivated to bank with Islamic bank because of their Sharia compliance, change the bank to conventional banks, that's something alarming. So we have to find out actually whether that was the real genuine issue. Yeah. So basically, these are my two questions I have for you. If you can share ideas on that. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Brother Saiko. Dr. Abduh, he raised 3 questions. I think you can answer directly, Doctor, please.
Okay. Was about the Sharia compliance issue as rank number 1 for people's motivation to patronize Islamic banking. Okay, that is done in Malaysia, right? And as we know that in what you call the culture of the people will also influence their decisions, right? So, and we need also to see because your question is there any case study that has been published or basically done and published with regard to Islamic bank customers move to conventional bank customers? Yeah. So in reality, it might happen. It might happen, but theoretically, I mean, if we recall that there are two types of Islamic banking customer, which is religious customer and rational customers. For religious customer, it is almost impossible for them to patronize conventional banks, and they are also only banking when Islamic banks was introduced, established in their country, right? Like for example, in Australia, in Australia, the Muslim society, they use cooperative instead of banks in order to fund their mortgage, in order to fund their automobile credit. They don't use normal conventional banks. They use their Muslim cooperative associations to finance all their necessities, basically, right? So it's the same thing here. So when the religious customers, we talk about religious customer, it is almost impossible for them to be shifted to conventional banking. However, those in rational group, the group of rational customers, they may what you call initially a conventional bank customer, and then they heard that Islamic banks are more resilient against the financial crisis and whatnot, so they try to open an account to Islamic banking customers. Yeah. So in this case, basically, the rational depositors most likely are initially conventional bank customer. So there is a possibility or a chance that the this group of people, they just withdraw from Islamic banking and move back basically to the conventional banking. So that's the different. Yeah, that's the different. Because if we say from Islamic banking to conventional banking, I think that is almost impossible. However, those from conventional banking going to Islamic banking, and then they found that Islamic banking is not like what they are expecting, then they're coming back to conventional banking. It might happen. Okay? It might happen. So I think that's for the last questions that you asked. The second question, Dr. Dimas, did you?
Yeah, the second question related to mitigation to the withdrawal risk, Doctor. How to mitigate the withdrawal risk?
Yeah. Okay. How to mitigate the withdrawal risk? Okay. Now, when I discussed this with Pak Mustafa is one among the first person initiating Islamic banking in Southeast Asia. In fact, I think in the world. Yeah, after Dubai Islamic banking. Yeah, he is the one that initiated Bank Islam Malaysia Berhad in 1980s. Yeah, and also helped Bank Muamalat Indonesia in 1990s to set up Bank Muamalat Indonesia. He was also teaching in IUM. We were at the same institute at the time. So he told me that, you see, with my own experience establishing many Islamic banks, especially in Southeast Asia, he said that there are almost no difference in terms of operational, not operational. It's like the financial, what you call, measurements and evaluations. Okay? But there is something which is significantly different from conventional banking, which is the behavior of the depositors. Yeah? Means that what Pak Mus is trying to say, that Islamic banks needs to develop a serious and significant attachment with the depositors. Yeah? How would we do that? Okay. Islamic banks need to have programs like educational programs in order to educate the people. What's the difference between Islamic banks and conventional banks? They may not necessarily to promote their own bank, just to educate the people, especially Muslim communities, right? About the riba, the maisir, the gharar, the bank mechanism. Okay, people now searching this from anywhere, from the website and whatnot. but what if the bank can provide it? Okay. Now, what is the channel that is most possible for the banks to do it? Okay. Now, from my previous study, using the factors affecting the intention to withdraw, there are two important dimensions significantly proven, which is attitude toward behavior, which is basically the knowledge, yeah, of the person, and then the subjective norm, which is basically the opinion of people perceived important by them. Okay, so from this, we can basically take action like, number one, Islamic banks need to educate the people, which is to improve their attitude toward behavior, their knowledge. Yeah, to improve their knowledge, give them more understanding about Islamic finance, right? And then we can use, yeah, people perceived important by them in order to give more understanding. Okay, who are they? They are ustads. So Islamic banks can go to mosques. Why don't we use like Islamic Banking Expo in mosques? Yeah, teach them, and then we may insert some explanation in khutbah Jumat, right? In a tausiah in the musola, surau, masjid. Yeah. So tausiah is not about. You see one thing really what I call interesting. Yeah. Me is, when the khutbatul wada, yeah, the final khutbah of the Prophet Muhammad SAW, yeah, in Padang Arafah, yeah, when he did the khutbah, he did not give khutbah, the preacher, he did not give the preach as like, let's take a lesson of Prophet Ibrahim and Prophet Ismail alayhi salam. No, his final khutbah is about riba. Okay, the khutbatul wada, it contains 8 points and all about muamalats. Yeah, that you have to do good to your family, that every husband and wife, they have their own right. Yeah, that we call there's no more blood for blood, life for life. Yeah, and also he mentioned about the eliminations of riba. Right? You see, the Prophet Muhammad, when give the khutbatul wada during the Hajj, it is not about the lesson from Prophet Ibrahim and Prophet Ismail alayhi salam, which is very normative. He touched the real situation of the people today in order to solve the current problem of the people. Right? So I think what we need today, I mean, in this case, banks have a lot of money. Yeah, in this case, banks can provide, a program, okay, for funding and whatnot, basically for, to educate the people through masjid, through schools, through universities, to educate the people, because riba is not in worldly life only. Riba is now and in the hereafter, right? So I think that's my 2 cents about how to mitigate withdrawal risk.
The first question, Dr. Abduh, he questioned about the two-tier mudharabah, whether it's different from the conventional perspective.
Yeah, initially it was 2-tier mudharabah models. At the asset and liability side, both sides are basically under mudharabah model, where if this is basically the ideal model of Islamic banking. Yeah, because most of the scholars says that the real spirit of Islamic economics and finance is profit and loss sharing. It is not that cost plus sale. Yeah. However, managing people's fund is not easy for banks, and this is always the what you call the reason put by bankers, Islamic bankers particularly, why they cannot implement 2-tier mudharabah model. So basically, for the liability side, when people depositing money to banks, right, under profit loss sharings, it is okay for the banks because of what? Because when they're experiencing losses, basically banks will not responsible for anything. Of course, we are not talking about the negligence and whatnot. This is we are talking about everything already put properly, but then still going for bankruptcy or loss in terms of investment. So it's okay for the bank because banks has no obligations to pay back all the money because it is profit loss sharing. Especially if the depositors are the Rabbul Mal, then basically all the losses will be borne by the Rabbul Mal, by the depositors. Now, at the asset side, when banks act as a rabul mal and the entrepreneurs, the business people act as the mudarik, those who manage the fund. If it is under mudarabah model and the people cheat, for example, the businessmen, they cheat, they did not put proper report on their profit and whatnot, that would be a trouble for the bank. Yeah. So this is always the reason put by Islamic bankers, basically why they don't implement the two-tier mudarabah model. So what they have now, what we have today in our Islamic banks is profit sharing, yeah, or maybe not even profit sharing, because wakala, wadi'ah, there are no obligation of banks to to give profit to the depositors, because it is like a safe custody, right? But at the asset side, they cannot be under liability. Under mudarabah model. It is under fixed income, like mudarabah, murabaha, salam, istisna, ijarah, summa al-bay, and whatnot. So this basically for them to be able to mitigate the withdrawal risk, yeah, and also to mitigate liquidity risk, liquidity risk, and to also mitigate, of course, bankruptcy. Yeah. Wallahu alam, Brother Saiku. I hope that can answer your questions.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Abduh. Okay, sisters, brothers, any other question, please?
Is it in the chat room?
Oh yeah. Is it one question from Sister Rasida?
Oh yeah, I can see now. Okay, I was too fast, yeah. Okay, I apologize for Nurul Nabila Zamri, Nofilia Aisyah. Yeah, maybe what you call? Yeah, I think because I don't know. All right. So is it true? Sorry, before that, there is a question from Nurul Nabila Zamri. What is dire consequences in fiduciary risk? Okay, dire consequences in fiduciary risk is basically, fiduciary risk is basically when Islamic bank breaching the contract, right? The forms of breaching contract can be in many forms. Okay, can be in many forms, like as long as the banks tidak menepati janji in terms of contract, in terms of the product they deliver, there are many forms of it. So the consequences of fiduciary risk, if they cannot manage it well, is basically number one, reputational risk. When it's a word of mouth, a word of mouth. So you see, when one Islamic bank is basically disappointing you, right? And you start telling your family, and your family start telling their friends, and their friends start telling their friends' friends. This is word of mouth. In a negative word of mouth is even faster than a positive word of mouth, right? So number one, it can cause a reputational risk, with the bank, creating panic among depositors. So this is one of the consequences. Number two, the second consequence can be the bank to pay a penalty. Okay, let's say the bank breaching the contract, where the penalty is, so the bank have to pay the penalty or any other type of compensation, any form of compensations. Yeah, let's say you have the project of building dam in your kampong, in your area, everything approved, the Islamic banks already approved. Suddenly, in the middle of the process, the Islamic bank said, we cannot fund you anymore because blah blah blah. Okay, so but it is written, in the contract that they will provide the fund, X amount of fund, for example. So there must be a penalty for the banks. Then the bank must pay the penalty. How big is the penalty? It depends on the contract. Yeah, if it is a big project, it might happen to be a very huge amount of penalty. Yeah. Number three, it can have a negative impact on the market price of shareholders' equity. You see, from this word of mouth, when you say that, oh, this Islamic bank is not good, blah 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 blah, okay, they will face reputational risk. Now, from this reputational risk, people start withdrawing. Okay, I don't want to deal with your banks anymore. Okay, I just want to move my money from Islamic Bank A to Islamic Bank B. You see, when this happen, right? When this happen, it will also give impact to the share price of that particular bank. Okay, so investors at the same time also, let's say for example, bank customers. Let's say for example, I'm buying shares of Islamic Bank A. okay, in the capital markets, for example. Then I heard that that particular bank has a very negative news, a very bad news, bad rumors about that particular bank from the people. And I'm worried that if I will just stay with the banks, right, then, it will face a bankruptcy of the bank. Okay, that's the worst case, basically, the bankruptcy of the bank. Okay, now before the share price going down, okay, better I just, sell my shares. So I will, throw my paper in the capital markets. Okay, and then when many investors selling their, the shares, their share of the particular banks almost at the same times, even in financial, in capital markets, the price of the shares is basically following the supply and demand rule. Okay, it does not reflect, sometimes it does not reflect the performance of the company itself. Yeah, it's just the following the supply and demand in the capital markets. Yeah, in the financial markets. So that will really affect the the market price of shareholders' equity. And then after that, it can also affect the bank's cost and access to liquidity. Yeah, because of bad performance, bad reputation. Sorry. Yeah. And of course, it may lead to insolvency if the bank is unable to meet the demand of current investment. Yeah, and also maybe a bank run. Yeah, it can happen. So bank run means most of depositors or saving account holders or any type of account holders in that particular bank withdrawing their money almost at the same time, and that particular bank has no ability to fulfill the the cash. Yeah, so they will face a bank run. Yeah, which is a sign for bank.
Okay, next one, Doctor.
Yeah. Should I go? Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Next one
All
is
right.
bank
Is it,
financing more expensive?
yeah, is it true that some people say that the Islamic financing is more expensive than the conventional loan? Well, it's not 100% true. Yeah, it might happen to certain banks. It might not happen to another banks. If you come to Brunei Darussalam, for example, yeah, it is not true. Yeah, it's not true. So Islamic banking in Brunei Darussalam has a very competitive price, especially for automobile financing, right? With the conventional counterpart, the Bank Baiduri. We have Bank Islam Brunei Darussalam, we have Bank Baiduri, right? They have a very competitive price. So it depends on the, I think, on the jurisdictions. I mean, maybe in Indonesia or certain area only in Indonesia have this problem. Maybe in Kuala Lumpur has the problem, but in Brunei Darussalam there is no problem of with regard to pricing the products because the rules and regulation here is very tight and everything is controlled by the government. So to increase price extraordinarily, which is very high, for example, and does not reflect the true market, then you got penalized. So I think it depends on the jurisdictions.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Doctor, for your answer.
Most welcome, Dr. Dimas.
Any other questions? Okay, meanwhile, Doctor, I have an query for you, Doctor, in the midst of the withdrawal risk. You see that right now the fintech is growing rapidly. The financial technology is growing rapidly. And so many non-financial institutions such as small bank, not bank, but they are operating like banks. They are offering some facilities for us for deposit and lending actually. So what do you think about this fintech growth? Is it any possibility to influence the withdrawal risk among Islamic bank in particular?
Well, thank you. Me actually one of the supporters of fintech, so I like the existing of fintech because that will basically relationship with banks. So I'm among those religious depositors, so I don't deal with conventional banks. I have Islamic banks, and that is only to receive my salary basically. but I do invest in stock markets. So I'm using facilities from Islamic banks to connect me with stock markets. So in this your case, fintech, I think fintech is a good one. Now the development of fintech now, and it may affect what you call the bank's profit. Yes, okay, but not the main one. I think if we talk about bank source of profit, right? This is basically what we call as a fee-based income. So what fintech basically trying to take from banks, basically the fee-based income of the banks. It is not. It is quite significant, but I don't think it is the main income for the banks. Okay, because the main income for the banks is basically, particularly conventional bank. I'm talking about conventional banks. It is basically the spread between the interest rate given to entrepreneurs and the interest rate that need to be paid to their depositors. That is basically the main source of income. The fee-based income is basically part of it, but it's quite significant as well. And for Islamic, I think it's almost the same. Yeah, since Islamic banks is using fixed income on their asset side, means that it's what will affect Islamic banks is basically only at the fee-based income, because mostly fintech facilitates us to payment facilities, right, and then transferring money facilities and whatnot. So I think it may affect, but and not the main one.
Okay, doctor. We have two last question from the chat from Sister Ibu Irma, from Madam Irma, and also from Sister Novilia.
Okay, I can read here. Some say that Islamic banks are not very developed in Indonesia because they use Arabic, such as Wadi'ah, Mudarabah, which are Indonesian in tongue, difficult to pronounce. Okay, so I think it may not. I'm not really sure, because here in Brunei we use also Arabic terms, not the Malay terms, and difficult to pronounce. Well, I think millions of Indonesian people can recite the Quran, right? So it is difficult to pronounce, basically reading the Quran, but we can do it. Yeah. So I think it is not because of it. Yeah, it's not because of it. So don't be so allergic with the Arabic terms. I think, right? Because even in the best performance Islamic banks are basically those banks in Arabs, and they are using Arabic terms. Yeah. And Malaysians banks also using Arabic terms. So no, it is not really significant about the terms. Is practice make and what in order to. Next is okay. I hope you can hear me, because okay, can hear Dr. Dimas, yeah?
Yes, doctor. Yes, please.
Okay, all right, thank you.
About the car. The car.
Yeah. There is an important relationship between risk and capital, correct? The more risk a business runs, the more capital requires. How the management of bank prepared a good car. So basically, the capital adequacy ratio, definitely it is something that cannot be negotiated. I mean, the government has already put how the level of car already put by the government, and those banks that car is below the threshold, I think the government will take actions. So I think in order to I call operational risk is not really related, because CAR is basically so much related with the liquidity risk, yeah, and market risk, yeah, in this case. I think that's all, Dr. Dimas.
Okay, Dr. Abduh and dear participants, very dynamic discussions today. Yeah, inshallah, Dr. Abduh is very expertise person in here, because he has already written books and published so many papers in the area of banking, Islamic banking and finance. And you can find his publication and books, yeah, in the internet. And looking at the risk that he has already mentioned before, yeah, that operational risk happens to be very important risk in Islamic banks, yeah, particularly looking at the left hand side of the banking system, namely relationship between the banks and also the depositors, yeah. So maybe I may conclude that that the withdrawal risk in Islamic bank is influenced highly by the depositors' behavior, which is divided into two more categories. The first is rational behavior, which is related with the changing on interest rate. And the second one is the religious behavior, which is committed to the Islamic bank, even though the rate of interest rate fluctuate beyond or higher compared to the return on Islamic banks. But Islamic bank remains to be prudent to manage the withdrawal risk, yeah, by continuously giving understanding and education to the depositors, so that they are highly committed and educated with the Islamic banks. I think that's all, Dr. Abduh. Before you end the session, maybe you have any suggestion or message to us?
Well, yeah, I think I put on it in chat already. For those who are interested to read the published paper, including those in withdrawal risk and operational risk, my work that has been published, you may go to that blog spot of mine, basically. And these all are students or also lecturers?
Yes, some majority of them are students, bachelor students.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, also lecturers.
Oh, okay, all right. So I think, yeah, well, I will just like to, I don't know, because I'm not a motivator, so I cannot motivate you. So, but the thing is, I think Islamic finance area are still broad and needs people like you in order to, come up with the most ideal form of Islamic finance. 30 years of Islamic finance today, I think, is still in its infancy level. So there, still needs a lot of improvement and, of course, definitely development in the area. And I think you can be part of it. Wallahu alam. So.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Abduh, for your
Thank you, Dr.
humble
Dimas.
suggestions. Again, on the behalf of Department of Economics and all of the committee members here, I would like to extend our thanks to Dr. Abduh for your precious time today in the midst of
most welcome.
Our Independence Day today. Yeah, I guess
yeah.
The embassy this morning.
Oh yeah.
To celebrate
betul,
our
betul.
day. Okay,
betul.
Dear participants, I think that's all our discussion today. Once again, thank you very much for your time. And Dr. Abduh, terima kasih for your attendance. Hopefully we can invite you again in the next occasions.
Yeah. My pleasure. No problem.
Inshallah, thank you. And we end the session by reciting Hamdalah together. Alhamdulillah. Rabbil Alamin. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Terima kasih, Bang Abduh.
Sama-sama. Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Doctor.
Yeah, most welcome. All the best to all of you.
International Program for Islamic Economics and Finance, Faculty of Economics and Business, Universitas Muhammadiyah Yogyakarta. We are the first international program for Islamic Economics and Finance in Indonesia. It is a full-time program with the length of study around 3 until 4 years. We provide outstanding scheme both for theoretical and practical application of Islamic economics and finance.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Welcome to the International Program for Islamic Economic and Finance, Faculty of Economic and Business, Universitas Muhammadiyah Yogyakarta. This program aims at promoting toward reputable international program on Islamic economic and finance in ASEAN by 2021.
The study is conducted in the comfortable class and through interactive learning process. IPF provides the best facilities for the students to get the international exposure, such as providing good environment and using English to communicate in every learning process. IPF is supported by teaching staffs who graduated from top universities around the world with their excellent international achievements.
IPF is aimed at the following objectives. First, to facilitate students in attending the Islamic virtues. The second is to set up capacity building of graduates. And the last, to provide graduates in Islamic economics and finance equipped with ability and good qualification as well as English language proficiency.
In response to achieve the excellence of the students, IPF also support the students with a community to learn about public speaking, organization, discussion, and trainings to enhance soft skills of the students that not studied inside the class.
Hello everyone, my name is Muhamad.
But I'm staying in UMY, I belongs IPIF. I have learned a lot of knowledge from the Islamic financial system.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh สวัสดีค่ะดิฉันนางสาวไมซารัสามะแอมาจากประเทศไทยนะคะ I'm IPF alumni 2011 I was graduate from IPF on June 2016 I'm very grateful to be a part of IPF because in IPF I got so many experience so many experience and good lecture and a lot of friends. After I'm graduate from IPF, I directly got master degree scholarship from Indonesia government to continue my study in Universitas Gadjah Mada.
For all of you who want to study and learn about Islamic economic and finance, let's come and join with IPF. Let we together move toward international and reputable program on Islamic finance in Indonesia and the world. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.